Most New Year's resolutions fail, but I have found the secret to making New Year's resolutions that actually work this year finally. If you're not into making New Year's resolutions, that's fine. I am very much a New Year's resolutions guy. I'm A, highly competitive. I'm the guy who's won 36.4% of all my fantasy football leagues, for instance. Number two, I work in education, so I'm very familiar with the idea of a growth mindset and constantly wanting to improve. Tercero, I would guess that I've read over 100 self-help books. I'm literally addicted to the genre. I loved it, especially in my 20s. And D, I'm a guy who loves anime, and so much of that is about self-improvement and empowerment fantasy. But 2025 is the first year in my entire life where I actually hit on all 5 of my New Year's resolutions, and I want to share you guys the secret to making that happen. First, the sort of generic advice on resolutions that you'll get if you ask something like ChatGPT is that you should focus on processes rather than outcomes. And that's valid. Rather than saying I want to learn a new language or be able to do 20 pull-ups, instead say I want to spend 5 minutes every single day practicing a new language, or I want to do at least one single pull-up every single day. The compounding effect of habits repeated daily or nearly daily is something that's very hard for our monkey brains to comprehend, but is immensely powerful. But hey, I read this book several years ago. So what was different this year? My secret to making resolutions that actually stick is to create a sort of mantra that can then become part of your identity. For me, the missing piece between an aspirational habit and actually doing that habit for a prolonged period of time is incorporating it into your sense of self, into your own personal identity. I'll share some examples from last year. One of my big resolutions was don't waste time. In the past, a couple of self-limiting identities had prevented me from this goal, such as being a procrastinator or being a guy who needs to take a break every once in a while, doing something like playing video games mindlessly. But having this mantra as an identity shift was major when I was in a fork in the road where I could go and play a video game for a couple hours, or I could sit down and work on a passion project for a couple hours. Not hating on video games, by the way, they're awesome, but there are some things that are just more fulfilling in life. And more than anything, becoming a father and having that as part of my identity as someone who takes care of their family has made me make these decisions more often than not in a way I never could have predicted before having kids. My single best resolution was to embarrass myself and fail more often than I ever have. And I definitely did. I actually didn't post videos until April, but still, when I started posting videos, they flopped a lot of the time, more often than not. A big part of that was having an anti-fragile identity that did not fear embarrassment. What makes this resolution to embarrass yourself more so awesome is that it basically requires you to have an identity of being confident. This was a lot harder for me when I was younger in high school, for instance. I was that guy who was always afraid to approach girls, afraid to approach my teachers, afraid to do anything that I wanted to try that might pay off, but also could lead to embarrassment very easily. But life gets easier in this way as you grow up, especially if you work hard to build an epic life, an epic family, get an epic partner, realize there's not really anything that can embarrass you on a deep level. 2 of my other goals, to gain an online following, to actually do something useful with my fantasy sports knowledge, randomly just ended up happening because of the other 2. I had actually forgotten about them when I checked with my wife on New Year's Eve to see what our resolutions were at the beginning of the year. But I want to know, what are your resolutions for this year? And in order to achieve those outcomes, what are the habits that you will need, and what is the identity that you'll need to procure in order to do so? Love y'all. Great things coming up this year for this channel.